This field right here called boundary type controls what we do for the values surrounding the start time and the end time. As you can see, it defaults to inside. Now what this means is that the value we first show is the value after the start time, and the value we last show is the value before the end time. So the start time is yesterday at 7. Today is the 7th of July, so yesterday, 6th of July, the very first value is the first value after 7 a.m. yesterday. That's why we come up with this 707. If I do a control down arrow all the way to the bottom, you can see the last value is at 6:58. That's the last value before 7 a.m. Now that was because we chose the default, which is inside. Now compare that to choosing outside. You'll notice, first of all, the number of values goes up. Instead of 255, now it's 257. So as you can imagine, what we've done is we've found the values before 7 and after 7. We also can choose interpolated, and what interpolated does is it interpolates a value exactly at 7 o'clock. That's going to be an interpolated value. Now this is described for you. You can see this illustration in your book. If we choose inside with, for example, these 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 values here, inside is just going to give me these 3 values that you see right here, B, C, and D. If we go with outside, outside is going to show me not only B, C, and D, but also A and E. Okay, we're not going to be getting an interpolated value. So it's A, B, C, D, and E. And then if we choose interpolated, with an interpolated value, we do not get A and E. What we instead get is F as an interpolated value, G as an interpolated value, and then all the values inside, which would be B, C, and D. Now there's one other option we haven't talked about, and that's auto. If you recall, when we talked about the archive value, auto had to do with a field, an attribute, when you build a point called the step function, or the step attribute. If you look at our point builder, you'll find that one of the attributes is called step. It can be either turned on or off. And the effect of step is that when it's turned on, this tag right here, CDEP158, when you trend this in Processbook, it's going to show up as a stair-step plot. We're not connecting the dots, we're just drawing horizontal lines between the values. Now that step function also affects how we retrieve data. When we choose a tag that has step turned on and you've chosen auto, what you're saying is you want DataLink to automatically retrieve data based on whether the step is turned on or off. Now the effect that's going to have is it's essentially going to be the difference between either interpolating a value for the start and end time. That's what's going to happen if you've got a tag whose step is equal to off, or if step is equal to on, it's going to do the equivalent of inside. So let me demonstrate. This is this tag CDT158, and we've set auto turned on. So with auto turned on for a tag whose step function is off, you're going to end up interpolating a value at 7 a.m. and 7 the following day. If we choose a different tag, like for example CDEP158, that's a tag whose step is turned on. With step turned on, you notice that we are not interpolating a value. It's the general rule with step turned on is we refuse to interpolate values. So if I take a look at the end time here, yeah, we are not interpolating values at 7 and 7. Any other tag, I'll choose a variety of tags here. Any other tag, and the tags typically have step turned off, we're going to interpolate values if you've got auto turned on. Okay, let's go ahead and wrap up our discussion of this dialog box. Again, filter expression, we'll take a look at that a little bit later on when we talk about more advanced filtering with performance equation syntax. Let me go ahead and set this back to, well, that's the default is inside. There we go. Yeah, so let's take a look at some of the other options. Hide count simply is going to hide this number right here. If you choose that, that number will then disappear when you update this. Next up, we can show the value attributes. Now the value attributes are those values or those attributes that would mark whether the value has been substituted or whether it's been annotated, or whether it's questionable. That's a value that can be assigned to a status that can be assigned to a value. Now those three things, they used to be called the status bits, and this field actually was labeled show bits. But with show value attributes, if you turn that on, then anything that has other than normal status is going to show up with that status labeled. So for example, back on the 6th of July, around 9 a.m., this value here was a substituted value. There's two things. If you notice, whoops, there's two things. If you notice, there's S for substituted, A for annotated. Indicates there's both a substitution here and it's been annotated. Now if I were to also show the annotations, it's not only going to show us that S and A to show us the attributes, but it's also showing us the annotation that's been made on this. Now if you've watched our previous videos on Processbook, annotations are something that you can do from within Processbook. So go out and take a look at the Processbook sections if you're interested in annotations, or just do a search for annotations. So here's the text annotation that's associated with that value. I'll go ahead and clear these and just go over the last option here is to deposit this in a row or a column. And as you might guess, if you were to switch over to a row, now what we're looking at is just a row of data instead of a column of data. Now to round out our understanding of this, let's try the other option. Instead of choosing time range, let's choose number of values. And for that, I think what I'd like to do here is, let me just copy this over to a new column here. And we'll start with the same tag name and the start time, but in this case, I'm just going to say, let's get the first 5 values. That's going to be the number of values I want to retrieve. So I'll go ahead and use that as my start time and my number of values. So with compressed data, instead of specifying the end time, I change this to number of values. I use this start time and that number of values. And of course this tag name. I'll go ahead and choose to show the timestamps. So what we're saying is bring in this value at that start time, but only 5 values. And there's our result. You can also have this data appear backwards in time. So let me give you an example. I'm going to copy this over. And it does have some limitations though, so let's go over this carefully. I'm going to go ahead and fill this out the same way that we saw before. Start time is here, and we'll choose number of values. Now I'll warn you, if you make a cell reference to this number of values, if you make a cell reference, this backward in time is going to dim out. You will not have the option to do that. This is only available if you hard code the number in here. Then you can choose that option. If you were to make a cell reference, that option goes away. And the reason we do that is because it's just kind of the nature of the design, an artifact of the design, I should say. Because that cell reference could actually go to a negative number, and it would give you undefined results if we went backwards with a negative number specified, given the way our functions work. So if you do want that option, you're going to have to make sure you hard code that number. I'll go ahead and show the timestamps. I'll go ahead and say OK. And as you can see, now we're going backward in time from 6:59, going backward in time here. Yeah, this actually isn't even needed since I hard coded that in the expression. Now one other interesting behavior about time is that in these attributes right here, the start time and end time, if you were to reverse the start time and end time, you'd actually reverse the way this appears in your screen. So for example, let me go ahead and change this around. Instead of yesterday plus 7 to today 7, let's go from today plus 7 hours to yesterday plus 7 hours. So you can see now we're going from the 7th of July, going backward in time to the 6th of July.